I never thought I'd witness the exact moment my life started unraveling. We had been married for 10 years, married in our late 20s, still figuring out the routines of life together. I'm David, 36, and I thought I knew my wife, Sarah. I thought I knew the limits of her loyalty and her sense of respect for the life we'd built together. But that night at the office Christmas party, every assumption I had about her crumbled in a matter of seconds. The party was loud, lights dim, music thumping through the hotel ballroom in downtown Seattle, and I was there mostly out of obligation. Sarah had insisted I come, said it would be fun to mingle with her colleagues. I've never been much for crowds, not the type to slip comfortably into small talk over drinks, but I went because I wanted to support her. I wanted to pretend I could enjoy these things. Sarah looked stunning, genuinely stunning. A deep red dress hugging her figure, hair curled just right. The kind of effortless beauty that still made me catch my breath after all these years. I smiled at her as we walked in, but she barely glanced at me, giving only a polite nod before slipping into conversation with someone else. A colleague, Ryan. Tall, clean-cut, with a smirk that immediately set off an odd tension in my chest. I wandered over to the bar, pretending to care about the holiday decorations and the trays of appetizers. But every few minutes my eyes flicked back to them, laughing, leaning closer, his hand brushing her arm in a way that felt too familiar. I told myself I was overthinking it, that she just enjoyed good conversation. Then I saw Ryan tilt his head, Sarah lean in, and suddenly their lips met. A kiss. Slow. Deliberate. Right there in front of everyone. The room didn't feel real anymore. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it over the music. My stomach twisted the way it hadn't since I was 17. I wanted to scream, march over, pull her aside, but my feet felt glued to the carpet. I stood frozen, watching the intimacy unfold like it was happening to someone else on a screen. And then it got worse. Ryan's hand slid down and lifted the hem of Sarah's dress just enough for her thigh to flash in the colored party lights. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. My fingers curled around the stem of an empty glass I hadn't even realized I was holding. Everything I believed about trust, respect, and the vows we'd exchanged collapsed in a single moment of brazen betrayal. I wanted to move, to charge over there, but my mind was trapped in a loop of disbelief. How could she do this? How could she humiliate me like this in front of her coworkers, people who probably didn't even know we were married? My hands shook, my vision blurred. But I forced myself to step back and find a quieter corner where I could process without completely losing it. I replayed their faces, the laughter, the way Sarah didn't pull away, didn't even look embarrassed. She looked alive, thrilled almost. And the realization crashed over me like ice water. This wasn't a drunken lapse. This was deliberate. This was who she was when she thought no one was holding her accountable. I drifted toward the exit, trying to make sense of the storm inside me. Anger, hurt, shame, disbelief. A cocktail so potent it made my hands tremble and my throat burn. I stepped outside into the cold Seattle night, leaned against the brick wall, and just let the air bite my face while I figured out what came next. That's when the small things I'd ignored started flooding back. The late nights at the office she couldn't avoid. The phone always face down on the kitchen counter in our house in Bellevue. The sudden closeness with colleagues I'd never met. I'd noticed, yes, but I'd convinced myself it was nothing. That I was paranoid. That I should just trust her. Yet here she was, shattering everything we'd built in the most blatant, unrepentant way possible, leaving no room for excuses. My mind raced. Confront her tonight in front of everyone? Just leave and never look back? Wait, gather proof, plan my next move? The thing about betrayal is that it hits instantly, but the fallout stretches on for weeks, months, years. I knew in that moment nothing would ever be the same. My marriage, my trust, my sense of self, all of it fractured in a way I wasn't sure could be repaired. I stayed outside for what felt like hours, watching the party through the windows, seeing Sarah laugh, completely unaware I was even there. Part of me wanted to storm back in, scream, drag her out. But something calmer told me reacting in rage wouldn't serve me. If I wanted clarity, if I wanted dignity, I had to wait. I had to plan. I had to move carefully. For the first time I realized how much control I'd unknowingly handed her over my emotions, my life, my sense of worth. And for the first time in years, I felt that control slipping back into my own hands, not with anger or tears, but with the sharp, bitter clarity that comes from being humiliated and choosing, consciously, not to let it destroy you. I drove home in silence, hands tight on the wheel, replaying every second. Sarah never called or texted, and for once I didn't care to hear her voice. The usual chatter of daily life felt distant, irrelevant. I'd been living in a version of reality that no longer existed. One I'd built in my own head where trust and love actually meant something. That version died tonight. The next morning I didn't speak to her directly. I didn't need to. Her absence in the kitchen, the way she avoided eye contact, confirmed everything. I made coffee, packed my lunch, and left for work as if nothing had happened. But inside a storm was raging. The betrayal was personal, intimate, humiliating, and yet strangely clarifying. I spent the day thinking, planning, remembering the man I used to be before routine dulled my instincts. The David who wouldn't tolerate disrespect. Who knew his worth. Who understood that being passive isn't a virtue when someone crosses the line. That man was still in there. I could feel him waking up. By evening I knew I had to face it, not with shouting or begging for explanations I'd never get. I walked into the living room where Sarah was scrolling on her phone and said plainly, "We need to talk." She looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten I existed. "About what?" she asked, voice light, almost mocking. "About last night," I said. "About what you were doing at the party. I saw everything." She didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. Didn't even look embarrassed. She just smirked like I was the one causing a problem by mentioning it. That's when the cold truth settled over me completely. No remorse, no regret, no intention of fixing what she'd broken. I took a deep breath. I can't do this anymore. I can't stay married to someone who doesn't respect me, who doesn't honor what we promised each other, who doesn't value the life we built. I deserve better. Her eyes flicked away. She muttered something about not making a scene and retreated to the bedroom. And just like that, the conversation was over. No fight. No pleading. Just a silent acknowledgement that everything had changed forever. The days that followed were surreal. I quietly started separating my life from hers, moving finances, looking for my own place in the city, focusing on the parts of myself I'd neglected. Friendships, health, purpose. The betrayal had been a shock, yes, but it also woke something up I hadn't realized I'd lost. Friends noticed immediately. "You seem different," one said. "Calmer. Clearer." They didn't know the full story, but they felt the shift. I'd reclaimed dignity and authority over my own life. I no longer felt small or invisible. That feeling had been replaced with something sharp and real. Freedom, clarity, self-respect. I didn't chase Sarah. Didn't confront her coworkers. Didn't make scenes. I simply lived on my own terms. Every time I remembered that moment at the party, the sting was still there. But it was tempered by the knowledge that her actions defined her, not me. My response, my calm, deliberate steps forward, those defined me. Weeks turned into months. The initial hurt transformed into steady resolve. I started dating again, cautiously, meeting women who treated me with respect, who valued honesty and loyalty. With each new connection I saw how far I drifted from what I actually deserved, and how crucial it was never to let anyone treat me as expendable again. That office Christmas party, that moment of public humiliation, became my turning point. It was the night I understood that love without respect is hollow, that loyalty is meaningless if it isn't returned, and most importantly, that no one has the right to diminish your worth without your consent. I don't think about revenge. I don't need to. My satisfaction comes from knowing I never compromised my dignity, never let myself be dragged into shame or rage. I left that life behind quietly, deliberately, and completely. I learned something essential that night. The most powerful response to betrayal isn't confrontation or anger. It's reclaiming your life, your peace, and your sense of self. Sarah continues her life, I suppose. I catch the occasional social media glimpse, but it's irrelevant. My life now moves to a different rhythm. One of clarity, self-respect, and emotional independence. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm simply aware that I deserve better. And for the first time in years I have it. The memory of that kiss, that careless, disrespectful moment, still exists, but it no longer haunts me. It reminds me that I survived it, that I chose myself over humiliation, and that I have the power to build a life worth living on my own terms. And that, above all else, is a freedom no betrayal can ever take away.